Hello, everybody. I'm Randy Holhut from the Commons, Windham County's independent source for news and views, with another edition of Meet the Candidates. And today's guest is Valerie Stuart, a Democrat from West Brattleboro, representing the Windham 2.1 or 2-1 district. Or 2.0.
Yeah, I know.
But anyways, the West Brattleboro district is the threesome that is the Brattleboro delegation.
Yes.
You're running for your fifth term.
Yes.
And we're here today for the usual questions and answers and
Yes.
whatnots to get you ready for another campaign. And
Yes. Well, thank you for having me, Randy. I'm delighted to be here.
so, with being an incumbent, you do have a record, and a long record,
Yeah.
with 4 terms in the ledge.
Yes.
And you're still working on those things that you've been working on since you've been going along. And
Absolutely.
your big 3 issues being workforce development, economic development, and generating revenue.
Yes. I think that's what the state needs to do at this point in time, Randy. And, you know, I'm a very practical person. I'm a self-made woman. My husband and I are both self-made people. And I want everyone in Vermont to have the ability, if they work hard, they and their family can have a good life. John and I came here in 1994 because we wanted a different kind of life for our children, who were at the time 1 and 3. So my vision is to build a better and a stronger Vermont, but to keep all the good things about Vermont, like the agricultural landscape, the forested landscape, the community values, the dedication to neighbors helping neighbor, and that sort of thing. So I'm, still excited by this work because I'm a mission-driven person, and I've always wanted to play a part in building a better world.
Where do you think Vermont could be doing better to, as you put it, become more accessible?
Well, a number of the things that we've been working on House Commerce and Economic Development, Randy, for the past 4 years. I was a member of the House Ed Committee for the first 4 years, my first 4 years. My second 4 years have been on House Commerce and Economic Development, which was my top pick. I wanted to move off Ed, which was, a relatively slow-moving train, and onto House Commerce, which was a faster moving train that I felt like I could have more of an impact and better use my background in marketing and business and that sort of thing. So some of the things we need to do, and I think we're on it as a state, which is great, and our committee did something very precise and very helpful to Vermonters, which is the first-time homeowners loan. And it's a Vermont Housing and Finance Agency loan. First-time buyers in Vermont can access. If you were buying your first house in Vermont, you could access that $5,000 loan. Coming up with the down payment is the biggest challenge for most people, particularly young people, which of course we want to attract and or keep in the state here. We're very graying, the second grayest state in the union. The Vermont Housing and Finance Agency loan, you don't have to pay it back unless you sell your home. So we've had a lot of use of this, and it's really great because I was lucky that we came here with enough money to buy our second home. But particularly Vermont kids who are here, we're not a wealthy state. So we have to give our kids whatever we can to help them stay here and want to stay here. And the 2 things most people want in life are a good paying job and a home to put, a roof to put over their family's head, and food on the table, of course.
So unlike other VHFA programs, this is a down payment loan rather than, say, the full mortgage like VHFA does for first-time buyers.
It's just down payment. It's a revolving loan fund, so
And how many people have taken advantage of it?
I should know that, but I know the first year there were like 73. Now I think we're up to a couple hundred, but I wouldn't hazard a precise answer because I don't know for sure. But I could let people know on your next program.
Well, another thing you're working on is trying to get younger people to come to Vermont to do the brochure that the McClure Foundation put out last year, which listed those 4,000 jobs that are available now to to young Vermonters if
Absolutely.
they have the education, and most of those jobs requiring 2 years of college or less.
Exactly, and we're all over that on House Commerce. We're very aware of that. One of my colleagues and best friends in the legislature, Jean O'Sullivan, who was appointed by Governor Shumlin, she and I are focused like laser beams on workforce development and on getting those young people into those 4,000 jobs. McClure wasn't the first to make note of that factoid. Actually, Champlain College did a survey, and the survey showed that 4,000 jobs were available in the state, but none of the kids at Champlain College knew about those jobs. So what we did on Commerce is worked with the schools and worked on a marketing plan that is both internally and externally oriented. And the internal piece is let kids who go to Vermont colleges know about the jobs here so they can get trained up to do those jobs. One other little piece of that puzzle, though, Randy, is there is somewhat of a geographic mismatch between skills and jobs and the people where they live and want to live and the skills. So we're still trying to figure that out. It's a tricky nut to crack, as you might imagine. But I think if we get out ahead of the curve by really getting kids aware of where the jobs are, people usually will follow opportunity if it's in their best interest, is my experience.
Well, geographic mismatch describes a lot of things in Vermont.
Yeah.
Like there's plenty of housing in Vermont. It's
Right.
just in places where where the
Exactly.
economic opportunities are,
Exactly.
or there's plenty of economic opportunities, but they're in places that you can't afford to live in.
Exactly. But I'll tell you, so as a state, we're all over the housing problem. We're all over the child care problem. What we're not all over is, in my estimation, and this is where I come in, is the revenue problem. I mean, and what we need to do is generate revenue. How do you generate more revenue? How do you grow your tax base? The way you do that is by creating jobs. So one of the things I'm most proud of that I was, pretty much the leading champion of was over a 4-year period, we secured $750,000 for an economic development marketing plan for the state that would address problems like that we just spoke of, the one we just spoke of internally, but also externally. People like John and I, the reason we moved here is because we used to love to come here and ski. And when we were in our 20s, so in our mid-30s, we moved here with our babies because we wanted a different life. So there's a saying, and it's, we want to get back, we want to attract the people who have 1 ounce of Vermont in their bloodstream. And John and I always did. We're very outdoorsy, athletic people. So, but the thing is, the only way we can do that is by telling people outside that there are jobs here, that there are opportunities here, that the state is accessible. You can meet the governor, you can meet the deputy secretary or the secretary of commerce, et cetera. So there are many things to recommend Vermont. I really see the glass as half full, not half empty. And there are things we have to do, like childcare and that sort of thing. But that's been on the table for a long time. We know we have to do it. Now we have to figure out how exactly to do it. And we're basically rolling that, like Sisyphus, rolling that big old rock up the hill. So.
Well, you look at Vermont and and all the quality of life measures.
Yeah.
We look great.
Oh, absolutely.
And all the business measures.
Exactly.
Although there's usually a thumb on the scale when those measurements are done, we don't look so great.
Well, but the thing about it is that when you start looking at the good things about Vermont, I mean, what we have to do, like in life, you have to focus on the good, right? I mean,
Yes.
That's as you get older, you really realize, life is short, and so you have to, focus on the good, build off that, and nurture that. And in Vermont, what we have is an incredible renewable energy sector. 2014, 17,000 jobs, more jobs per capita than any other state in the union. So here's the thing. I mean, I came up with an idea. I'm an innovative thinker and a creative person. I mean, that's what I am. I know what I am, who I am, what I'm good at, what I'm not as good at. And what I'm good at is coming up with ideas. So several years ago, I think it was like 3 now, but the Vermont Council on Rural Development held a climate summit. Climate change, in my estimation, and in the military's estimation, and in Barack Obama's estimation, is the biggest threat of our time. I deeply believe that. I've believed that for many years. I read something by the Union of Concerned Scientists. It was this big in the New York Times, 24 years ago when I lived in New York City, and I wrote the Times going back and forth commuting on a train.
Well, when James Hansen first testified before Congress in 1988, that the climate was changing and not for the good, and that we had to deal with it pretty quickly, or humanity was under threat.
Exactly, and we are under threat now. And what that little teeny blurb said was the Union of Concerned Scientists predicted more global weather events that would be catastrophic or very difficult, or have this.
And well, we know the rest of how that turned out.
Exactly, we know the end of that story, or the middle part. The end is, I think we have to turn those lemons into lemonade. We humans, I think many of us understand that we need to turn this ship around. But I think that the best way to do that is to celebrate what we're doing that's good in this state. So back to the Council on Rural Development, I came up with the idea, let's have a national summit on climate change and what we as a state have to recommend us in terms of all the great companies we have. We have amazing companies. Here in Windham County, we have the Eco Hub, and up in Burlington they have. So it's not just the northeastern kingdom. We're becoming the southeastern kingdom. SEON, sustainable energy network, and Green Building, Alex Green's wonderful company, and Geraldine Green's wonderful company, that sort of thing. So what we did is the Vermont Council on Rural Development took my idea, which was to have a national climate, renewable kind of energy and that sort of thing summit, and they put it together. It was just my idea. I didn't put it together. It was just my idea. It was in the news. My comments got a little bit botched at one point, but I take no credit for anything but the idea. But it was a great idea, and it turned into a 3-day summit, attracted 500 investors and entrepreneurs to this state. Many of them Vermonters. I mean, I saw all sorts of people from down here, Bob Stevens and Tad Montgomery and the whole crew of people who are interested in renewable energy. And it was 3 days. It was super exciting. Thought leaders were there talking about. People came in from California talking about California's a real leader in the renewable energy sector too. So, that was something I'm very proud of. It brought 500 people to Burlington for a 3-day summit. I mean, Deputy Secretary Ted Brady, he said there were about $3 billion worth of investment dollars in the room at the time of the pitch session, where 11 companies pitched their ideas for, So those are the kinds of things I think we can do that are not expensive, but creative, to put our state on the map as a place young people, and the bottom line was I wanted to get young people to think, wow, Vermont, like my son, wow, Vermont's a cool place, Burlington, Brattleboro, I'll come back after, working in San Francisco, at a super cool company that's changing transportation and moving it into the future. So
you've talked about how many graduates there are for every year from Vermont colleges and how few of them stick around, and I guess that's not the get obsessed over that number, because kids are going to leave and kids are going to go out and see the world.
Yeah.
It's when they hit their 30s and they don't come back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I am actually seeing some, it's interesting, outdoor knocking. I've bumped into people and seen people, some of their kids are moving back, I mean, not in droves, but, I think it's good for people to go away. I went away to Spain, Madrid, Spain, my junior year of college, and it changed my life for the better, Randy. I mean, it just changed me in every way. I saw the world in such a different, positive way. It just was like a very enriching experience, which I think going abroad is for, people in high school and college. So I think it's good for them, but, our daughter will probably come back. Our son, he talks a good game. Never sell the farmhouse, Mom. It's 1850s farmhouse. He adores it. But I'm like, well, Ian, you're not going to move back into it. And he's like, well, don't sell it anyway. I'm like, well, okay, we're not selling now, but, he wants us to, keep it in the family forever, which I'd like to do too, but,
Well, you get to issues like property tax and funding education and that magic number 46 as an Act 46 and how our school districts, as particularly here in Windham County, are are quite worked up about it.
Absolutely. You know, the good news in Vermont, as you know, Randy, is everybody cares about education. The bad news in Vermont is everybody cares about education so much that it's hard to do anything in a, you know, timely manner. And look, enrollment in our schools has gone down by 20,000 people over a roughly 20-year period. We're one of the third highest spenders in the United States. That's fine if the tax base can afford that. But people are crying poor about property taxes. I get it. John and I are property taxpayers, but the thing about it is we've got to figure out how to change that paradigm, and that's a very difficult process. And you know, I think that as a state we've moved incrementally forward. Act 46, all of these iterations of Act 46. When I was on education, well, going on 5 years ago, my first 4 years, you know, it was,
Act 60 and Act 68.
Act 60, Act 68, regional education districts, mixed, we called them MUDs, mixed unified districts. People would get up on the maps and which school systems could. So it's really hard, and it's a wrenching thing because I understand and I've seen how important in small communities their school is. So, you know, I really, early on, I was for this, you know, moving forward, and the Education Committee has always voted out these, what else are we gonna do, everybody, you know? We wanna keep our property taxes down, and we wanna do a good job educating our kids. We've gotta, you know, move toward a bit of unifying our school districts, because at one point we had like 257, you know.
More districts and towns in Vermont.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just crazy. So, but I think, you know, but we don't want to lose the local voice. We want people to be connected. Our children are our future. They always have been. Children are the future of this country, and you know, I mean, we are moving into the past, our generation. So, you know, I think the next thing is the state board will have to look at, you know, some of the real unhappiness, and I understand it. I've gone to some meetings now where, you know, once the legislature got out, and, you know, I went to some of those meetings even before it got out, but I could really wrap my head around this has not been a comfortable process, and it's not a process that some of the towns like Dummerston and Vernon and you know, Putney and Brattleboro, you know, feel good about. But I will tell you that many education leaders in the state also feel like we've got to figure it out, guys, because you know, we can't have rising education costs and declining enrollment. I mean, we've got to figure out how to bring those two lines together in a way that works for our students and our children and our communities. So I think we're, you know, I think it's painful progress, but I think it is progress, and I think it's going to go back to the state board and back to the Agency of Education, and you know, hopefully we'll get a new Secretary of Education that, you know, will be able to, you know, lead the troops forward on a new path that is more comfortable for some of the towns that are really don't want to unify. And I understand what they don't want to lose the local voice, and that's important. And I hear that. So I think you know, it's very important. I'm glad I'm on commerce and economic development, so it's not my primary responsibility. You know, my primary responsibility, the way I see it, is, you know, taking those educated kids and then making sure that they're trained up for the jobs of today and tomorrow here in Vermont and elsewhere, and that they can pursue, you know, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, an apprenticeship, an internship. That's another thing, Randy. I mean, we found out. Not every kid needs, you know, nor can they afford a 4-year degree. So, you know, one of the things we really want to do as a state, and workforce development got put in statute specifically, not, you know, de facto, but de jure, under the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee's purview. So it really is ours now on commerce and economic development. And the thing about it is that we take that very seriously. And, I got to tell you, nothing makes me happier than first generation kids, like introduction to college studies, like that's some of the work, we did, started on ed and then are finishing on commerce in terms of, it's really super cool to see a first generation kid, to meet a kid who's going to college, the first generation, So in dual enrollment, and so we did some amazing things, and we're going to continue to do amazing things on education. We have some super competent people. In our delegation, Emily Long is just so devoted to the issue and, so knowledgeable about it. And I check in with her all the time about, okay, where are we on this, Emily? Because it's a pretty complicated, picture. And House Commerce and Economic Development, Randy, we were one of the hardest working committees in the building. Most anybody will tell you that. I mean, at the end of the session, everybody's working long hours, but our chair of 9 years, fabulous, brilliant man, Bill Botso. I mean, he worked us hard. So there, we are focused, and I was focused on workforce development, job creation, the things we spoke about. So.
You have the distinction of having one of the few contested races
Yes.
on the ballot.
Yes.
Your opponent
Yes.
is Emily Kornheiser.
Yes.
And if you have your chance now to look to tell your district why you should go back for a fifth term, what would be the high concept answer?
Oh, I think the high concept answer is, I have 8 years of experience in the Vermont State House, and I've worked really hard. I'd encourage people to look at my record, to look at all the bills I've worked on, and to look at all the bills we've passed that are good for Vermont and Vermonters. I have a vision for the future, which is, it's an original vision in terms of it's an economic development, job creation, revenue generation vision for Vermont, where all Vermonters will be able to do what John and I did and our kids did, which is work hard. Our kids went to public schools, start to finish. I'm a strong believer in the public schools, as is John. We both went to public schools too, but at any rate, when we grew up. But the point is that I want all Vermonters to, if they work hard and value their family and their community, that they can do well. I mean, and I would like to pass on that good fortune to people, and it really does give me great joy helping people. We talked earlier, my mother was a nurse, my father's a doctor, a veterinarian, I worked in his clinic my entire time growing up so I could pay for college. My father wasn't going to pay for college, My grandmother was a Scottish immigrant off the boat. So my father, he'd pay me every $6 for every $6 I earned in his clinic in the summer. And that was it, He was a self-made man, went to Cornell on the GI Bill. So, he worked 3 jobs when he was going to Cornell. So I've always worked hard. I value that, and I get joy out of helping people. And I think people know me and John Mabey, my dear husband. I've been with him for 38 years. And, so I'm lucky, and I want everybody to have that in Vermont. I feel fortunate to live here. I want to protect and nurture what I value about Vermont and what we all value, which is the natural beauty, farms and farm families and the forestry sector, tourism, ag landscape, forestry. They're our top 3 income generators. So we didn't even talk about tourism, but I'm all over that too in terms of marketing. And, I was the head of the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center board way back when we were the only tourist attraction on the Vermont state map in Brattleboro. Now that's all changed for the better. I mean, I'm all over the art stuff. I'm a big arts aficionado, and, I reported on the House floor. It's called the Vermont Creative Network. We put $50,000 filtered through the council, the Vermont Arts Council, they're the fiscal agent, to connect all of the many arts enterprises and people all across Vermont. So the tourists can come here and say, oh, I can go to that studio and, see someone blowing glass, and then I can go here and see, Wolf Kahn and Emily Mason and, Petey Mitchell and Jim Gidding's beautiful work, and, these local painters that we're so lucky to have here. So Vermont has more artists per capita than any other state in the union. I mean, that's pretty cool. So, I'm into taking, building from what we have and moving forward. And like all states, we have problems. The opioid problem is horrific, and it's terrible. And I think we're taking measures as a state to move forward on that. I think that's really, really important, and we have to keep going on that. But the other thing we have to do is we have to give people hope for the future. And we're living in a very tumultuous time where hopelessness is rampant because some people are in a box they can't get out of. And we have to, as lawmakers, give them the exit strategy and give them tools to move forward in a positive way, especially if they're from less fortunate circumstances or, terribly unfortunate circumstances. But I think the Vermont legislature and our delegation is all over many of the things I mentioned. We have a really great delegation. I've been thrilled to work with them. I mean, for 7 years, I brought them together twice a month as a group so that people, the CEO of our local hospital or of the retreat, or Chris Campany, our wonderful regional planning commission director, can come and talk to us as a group up there, because it's easier to talk to us, January through early May, or usually. This year was an anomaly, certainly, but to speak with us up there about things that are important to all of Windham County. I see all of Windham County as my constituency, but I see that residents of West Brattleboro as my most important constituency. And I think the people in Tri-Park, Westgate, a lot of these places, they'll tell you, I have gone to those meetings for years. The West Brattleboro Association, I was one of the earliest members, before I ever got in the legislature. I was the founder of the Brattleboro Sunrise Rotary over 20 years ago. I'm still a member. And the museum, and I could go on and on. But I won't, because I'm sure we're reaching our time.
And we have.
Ah!
And so thanks for dropping by. Don't forget, it's the primary is August 14th. And you can vote right now if you go down to go to the town clerk's office and get your early voting ballot. And thank you for coming by. And
Can I say my website?
Oh yes, put in your.
Oh, so sorry. I'm very excited about my new website. My wonderful son, Ian Stuart, has been my head honcho on it from afar. And so it's valeriestewart.com. Stuart is S-T-U-A-R-T. I would encourage you to look at my website if you are website savvy, so to speak, and see what my positions are. And then the other thing is, if you're a Facebook type person, I have my Facebook page is Reelect Valerie Stuart. I've served for 8 years, and I've been in this community for 25 doing mission-driven work. And then lastly, my phone number, if you prefer to reach me on that, is 802-257-0249. Just leave a message of how I can best contact you and when. Oh, and actually, really last but not least, it's my, if you prefer email, it's vstuart, S-T-U-A-R-T, at ledge, L-E-G, state.vt.us. So thank you, Randy, for having me. And, I hope to continue to serve this wonderful state. I love the Green Mountains.
Thank you.